Everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. So I'm just going to say a very big thank you to the leadership and management of Oando for this opportunity. And I'm also just going to celebrate the future of legal practice. Every one of you, young lawyers from different universities, I look forward to an exciting session with you guys. But let me just let me just have a feel of the room. I'd like to know the universities represented here. What schools do we have here? Starting from number one, sorry. Okay, I can't hear you. So I like to say that, so who can guess my university? And I know some of you know, so please don't mention. I like to say that I went to the original version of Unilag. Yes, but following what Ms. Duru said this morning, she had described somebody as being a high-value lawyer. So I'd like to say that I attended a university that churns out high-value lawyers. Can you guess now? Yes, please. Lagos State University. Yes. Okay. And I'm just going to introduce myself briefly and what I do. And as much as possible, we're going to try to make this session interactive just so that we get the best out of it. So I am a commercial dispute lawyer. What that means is that I'm that lawyer who's on the other end of the line when things go wrong, trying to help parties resolve their disputes, either in court or in arbitration. But I'm also a dispute avoidance lawyer because we're understanding these days that parties no longer want to fight, if that's avoidable. And so I do a lot of work in the construction and infrastructure space, as well as in the energy sector. And what I do basically is to try to, from a very early stage, ensure that there are limited scopes or opportunities for disputes. How did I get here? I started out in what I think is a very good university. You might not agree with me, but I started out in a university like Lagos State University. And I've said that because I know a number of us here have attended universities that are not Harvard, that are not Oxford, and then you think, do I have a disadvantage by virtue of my start? Do I have a disadvantage by virtue of the fact that I didn't go to Ivy League university or a private university? So that's one thought to hold. After university, I went to law school in Kano. I didn't go to Lagos campus or Abuja campus. I didn't get to network with some of the, big guys. Thank you very much. Again, you're going to find yourself in that situation, and then you ask yourself, is that a disadvantage, right? And then after law school, I went for NYSC. You think that things would finally look better for me, but guess where I went to guess where I went to serve? I served in Kwara State. Yes, I served in Ilorin, and I remember that my first salary as a lawyer was 7,500 naira. And trust me, this was not 10 years ago. This was less than 10 years ago. I've said all of this to say that it doesn't matter where you're starting your practice. It doesn't matter, what university you're starting out, what factors, don't necessarily look good in your favor. What matters is what you make out of it. How can you position yourself as a lawyer who's able to get all the opportunities? And so today, we're going to be discussing law without borders, building a career beyond jurisdictions, beyond the fact that you're an indigene of Kogi State, beyond the fact that you studied law in, okay, let me not mention names, right? How can you position in Uniben? Yes, I'm looking at you. So how can you position yourself for opportunities across borders? And some of the things that I'm hoping that we can cover today is just even understanding the nature of the world that we are in right now, the nature of legal services, the nature of legal needs, and then the opportunities that being in a borderless world creates for us as young law students, and budding lawyers, and how we can position ourselves for those opportunities. And obviously, the world is changing. We've said a lot of that this morning. We used to say that the world is a global village. And more than ever before, we're beginning to see that the world is actually a very tiny, interconnected village because of two key factors: globalization and technology. We're seeing that organizations across different countries and jurisdictions are now beginning to expand their businesses beyond their countries. They're beginning to expand their influences beyond their countries. Because of that, there is the need for legal services beyond your primary place of business, and technological advancements as well. The human race has now been able to defy the obstacles that existed in jurisdictions and barriers. So now you're able to go from Nigeria to Asia, you're able to do business across different continents. And so technology and globalization creates opportunities. The impact is that, first of all, new laws have had to be created because of these new advancements. So for example, we're talking tech, we're talking fintech, we're talking people using personal data or processing personal data. Prior to COVID, prior to the advent of tech, we didn't have a very strong data privacy legal framework in Nigeria, for example. But now, there is a need to understand. Everybody has to comply. There are compliance requirements for organizations with respect to processing of data. So the globalization and technology creates new needs, basically, and then new needs, new laws, and obviously the need for new lawyers who are able to speak to these needs. And I'm just going to ask very quickly, sorry, I've moved past that. Yes. I'm just going to ask, and please, yes, display the next slide. I'm going to paint a few scenarios of the kind of work that I face every day and the kind of work that lawyers face every day. And you'll see some of the cross-border elements in today's work and the nature of legal services. So picture yourself as a lawyer, you have a client, it's a fintech startup, and think Flutterwave, think Paystack. This fintech startup has users in Nigeria, in Kenya, in South Africa, across different countries. Your clients, obviously, from time to time, would need legal advice on how to navigate these different markets. What are the IP laws? What are the legal and regulatory requirements? And you have to advise, either solo, if you're so confident to advise on UK law, or in collaboration with lawyers who are qualified or practice in these jurisdictions. Think of a construction dispute. Think of a highway project, any project, highway, road infrastructure, rail project in Nigeria. The investor is Chinese. The government, obviously, is African. The contractor is Indian. The financing agreement or the EPC contract is governed by English law. The arbitration is seated in Paris. The award is supposed to be enforced in Dubai. How many jurisdictions do you see here? Several. And that's actually the nature of work. So from time to time, you're either having to review an agreement, you're trying to see what is the position of English law on limitation of time. What's the position of English law on enforcement of judgments? What's the position of Indian law, for example, with respect to, depending on the nature of the agreement. So as a lawyer today, for you to be able to provide your clients with the needs that they have, you have to navigate law beyond your territorial jurisdiction, either based on knowledge that you have or based on your collaboration with other lawyers. Think of an oil spill occurring in the Niger Delta area. You have a multinational operator who's headquartered in Europe, and then who has shareholders in the US, and then is facing shareholder pressure from these investors. That's cross-border work. Think of a Nigerian artist. You're an entertainment lawyer. Your client says, he's found himself in a situation where he sampled a beat created by a South African producer signed to a UK label. This is the reality of legal practice today. And the question is, how can you, as a lawyer called to the Nigerian bar, position yourself to be relevant to these kind of needs? How can you be the go-to lawyer who's able to meet these legal services? And next we go to, now that we understand the kind of services that our clients need, how can you position yourself? What is the role of lawyers in this evolving world? And I would like to ask you guys, just so that we understand what has changed from traditional practice to what legal services require now. Between traditional lawyer and modern lawyer, what has changed? What do you know used to be 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, that has changed from what currently occurs or obtains? I'll call by university. Olabisi Onabanjo University. But just asking, what has changed in the, I'm sure a lot of you have been wanting to be lawyers for more than 5 years. You know what it used to be like. What has changed? Yes, please. Brilliant. Yes. So your traditional lawyer was all about court. You know, we're going to fight it out. You see all those stickers behind cars, sue that bastard, right? All of that has changed, actually. Now, and we'll discuss that very shortly, legal services, and people are now, people are tired of fighting. These days, when people say, oh, you're a lawyer, it's nice to meet you, I'll go and fight, I'll go and look for trouble. I say, please, I don't even want trouble again. Like, let's seal deals, let's do other things. People are tired of fighting. So that's something, and thank you very much, that's very brilliant. That's something that has changed, yes, from traditional legal practice to modern legal practice. Yes, please. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, digitization of court processes. Of course, more advanced in some jurisdictions than others. We are still trying to, gradually ease into that in Nigeria. When you talk about our court systems, we're still quite paper-based, and we're still quite, you go to court during trial, the judge is saying, I'm still writing. So we're going to get there, don't worry, but we're not there yet. But yes, in terms of the court processes, there's the digitization, and then even just legal practice, and we'll come into that very shortly. One more person, and then we'll move on. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So in the past, you would have to, if your senior had asked you to conduct a research on let's say mandatory injunctions. What are the conditions for the grant of a mandatory injunction? You'd have had to go to the office. You'd have had to find a law report. You'd have had to check Shashebon. All of that has changed now, right? And you guys are right. Next slide. We'll start with some of the light ones. So the difference between the traditional lawyer and the modern lawyer. And, we'll see how the role of a lawyer has evolved. In the past, the traditional lawyer used to live in a sea of paper. Like you said, everything paper-based. You see some senior advocates, even till now, and senior lawyers, when they are drafting their briefs, they have to write it on A4 paper, then they give it to somebody to type, and that's how they process their thoughts. All of that is gone now. Now, modern lawyers live in the cloud. We are utilizing AI tools to process our work. Traditional lawyer would carry a briefcase. Now, all you need is your laptop, right? There are some law firms who, God forbid, COVID happens again, they still cannot function because all of their resources, their cases, etc., are in files somewhere. This is all I need. I can travel anywhere in the world with my laptop, and I'm fine. In fact, this is my office. I don't need any briefcase. I don't need any. This is all I need to function as a lawyer. Your traditional lawyer used to work 9 to 5 in one office. And then today, your modern lawyer works across different time zones, often 24/7 in global time. I was on a call with a lawyer in Australia yesterday. We're just trying to even agree time zones. I think we had the call 10 a.m. my time. It was 8 p.m. our time. And that's the reality of a lawyer today. You can't say that I do 9 to 5. You can't reach me after 5 o'clock. Next slide, please. And then to the more serious differences. In terms of the scope of work, your traditional lawyer used to work in one jurisdiction. I'm a Lagos lawyer, I'm a Nigerian lawyer. I only know Nigerian law, advice on Nigerian tenancy law, Nigerian banking law, Nigerian oil and gas law, and that was brilliant, right? Now you're working across multiple jurisdictions and borders. Like the examples that we saw, you need to be able to understand basic legal principles across jurisdictions and how to leverage research tools as well. Obviously, because you're not qualified to practice in the UK, I don't expect that you understand everything about English law. But you should be able to access resources that can even help you give preliminary advice based on, whatever resources are available to you. Practice style. So in the past, again, we are discussing the evolving role of lawyers, don't forget. In the past, lawyers used to be reactive. Like I said, as a dispute lawyer, you're on the other end of the line. When things go bad, people come to you. And that's how we used to be traditionally. You're only responding to problems after they've happened. But now, legal needs have changed. Your client expects you to be proactive. So modern lawyers anticipate risks and create proactive strategies. We're talking risk avoidance. We're talking risk mitigation. We're talking, how do we not get to that point? Tools in the past, like we said, paper-based research tools, precedent-driven, but now we're able to leverage AI, e-discovery tools, document review tools, etc. And then knowledge base, I think that this is very important in understanding your client's needs. In the past, it was okay to just have knowledge of substantive law. Brilliant lawyer, he knows the law, he knows evidence, he knows procedure, right? There was not much requirement for having business and tech literacy, right? There was limited business and tech literacy. It was just knowledge of law. But now, as a lawyer in the 21st century who's looking to do work beyond borders, in addition to your deep knowledge of the law, you're supposed to have literacy in business, tech, data, and culture. Next slide, please. And then, I like to just refer you to this quote that helps you understand the nature of legal services that your clients need now. And I came across this quote one time when I was advising a client. It was a dispute resolution proceeding. Sorry, it was a dissolution of marriage proceeding, and then there was a tussle about custody of the children of the marriage. We were representing the grandparents, and then the party on the other side was the father of the children. And, the grandparents wanted custody to the children because the mother of the children was late. And I had to advise them. So my boss had said, okay, do a legal opinion advising them on their right to custody. And after I'd done my opinion, it was obvious. There was no way that the court was going to give custody to the grandparents as against the father. And I was frank in my opinion. And then I told them, that the custody is going to go to the father. The children are almost 18 years anyway, so just wait. When they're 18, they can come to you. My boss was furious. You don't tell a client that, right? This is what a client, wants from you. He says, I don't want a lawyer to tell me what I cannot do. I hire a lawyer to tell me how to do what I want to do. That is your role as a lawyer. It's not so when you provide legal opinions, you're not telling your clients, well, you've breached the contract, so you have to pay. Or the law says that your license has expired, so that's the end. No, your client probably knows the law, right? So the question is, how can you help your client navigate the legal situation or the legal disadvantage that they found themselves in? You must bear that in mind, as a 21st century lawyer who's trying to work across jurisdictions. Your knowledge base has to be, you must also be commercially savvy. You must understand the needs of your clients. Like, we don't just need you to, when you're preparing opinions to us, we don't just need you to advise us on what the law says. How can this apply to our situation? And then I think we can, okay, yes, I guess the last point I would like to make there is the path of a traditional lawyer was just linear. It was associate to partner, and then maybe I should ask, how many of you here want to be senior advocates? Okay, interesting. How many of you here want to be judges? Oh, that's good. Very good. In Nigeria, right? You don't know. No, but that's not bad, actually. That's very good. Are there other career paths you're exploring? Let me just have a feel of the room again. So those of you that don't want to be senior advocates, those of you that don't want to be judges, what do you want to be in future? Yes. So you want to be a policymaker. So you're looking, okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Any other person? You don't want to be a senior advocate. You don't want to be a judge. So what do you want to be? Yes. How many of you want to be senior advocates? Let me see again. How many of you want to be judges? The people on this side, what do you want to be? Yes. Explore other parts like find my own path. Okay. Other parts like what? But what's the big picture? Okay. Yes, try. Brilliant. Bring in digital skills, and you'll be very interested in the next session, I'm sure. Yes. So I did that to show us that it's okay if you don't want to be a senior advocate. It's okay if you don't want to be a judge. It's okay if you don't want to be a partner in a law firm. There are many other opportunities out there. You just need to know them so that you can position yourself. So unlike traditional lawyers who had to be one of these three, right, or maybe even in-house counsel, now the world of work for lawyers is flexible. You're able to work across different sectors and different jurisdictions. Now you're able to merge your passion with your legal practice. Now you could do fashion law. Now you could do tech law. Now you could do sports law. You know, a lot has changed now. And then you can, as an entertainment lawyer, I see some entertainment lawyers, they're always having fun. They're always going out with their star clients, you know. Why not, right? So the world of work for lawyers has changed because legal services and legal needs have changed. Okay, now speaking more about opportunities in cross-border practice, we've said that we are Nigerian lawyers called to the Nigerian bar. By virtue of being Nigerian, some people think that you already have a disadvantage. I disagree with that because I think that just even having a law degree and being called to the bar, it positions you for other opportunities, right? But the question is, after law school, what do you do with your LLB? What do you do with your BL? And we're going to discuss these opportunities in two ways. One is, as a lawyer in Nigeria, how can I do work outside of Nigeria? For example, I'm a lawyer in Nigeria, right? Or maybe something I did not mention, you know, is the fact that I recently had the secondment with the international arbitration team in a global law firm called Hogan Lovells in their London law firm. And the question is, how can you position yourself for opportunities like that? Right, so there are two ways. You can either be a lawyer who wants to japa, right, and that's okay. You want to position yourself to be able to do international work. That's one aspect of this. Or you could be a lawyer who you're here in Nigeria, but you're accessible to other markets, right? And a path like international arbitration gives you that opportunity. I'm an international arbitration lawyer. I just said that I was speaking to somebody in Australia. I have lawyers from different jurisdictions, you know, in my network, Ethiopia, Mauritius. Think about it, you know, the UK, Canada, and that's what international arbitration. So the first thing we're going to discuss in terms of opportunities and how you can plug yourself in for global work is international arbitration. So if people are transacting across borders, it means that there's a likelihood for disputes to arise. And then, obviously, they're not going to. So let's talk about our construction dispute example. You have an Indian contractor. You have please remind me, you have a Chinese investor. If a dispute arises, and you had to advise your client, would you go to a court in China? You're representing the Nigerian party. If a dispute arises, would you go to a court in China? Is it likely? Why? Why? Why would you not go to a court in China if a dispute arises in the context of your construction dispute? One, okay, yes. And so let's assume you could even get qualified, a lawyer qualified in China. Why would you not advise your client, your Nigerian client, to go and resolve a dispute in a Chinese court? Yes. Because what? The law differs. Okay, yes. There's something I'm looking for. Yes? Yes. Exactly. Neutrality, impartiality, right? So because of the interconnected nature of work now, people are choosing more neutral dispute resolution platforms or models. And one of such is arbitration. And then you choose international arbitration because there is a foreign party or there is an international element to the kind of work, right? So international arbitration is quite common in certain sectors, oil and gas, trade, finance. So for example, with construction disputes, we have standard forms of contractual construction disputes. One of them is FIDIC, which is a standard form that is issued by the International Federation of Consulting Lawyers. And in that contract, for example, the standard form of dispute resolution is arbitration, ICC arbitration, seated in Paris. Of course, parties can amend, but check your law reports, check NWLR, check Law Pavilion. You will hardly see any recent case where the courts are determining construction disputes. They don't have, with all due respect, they don't have the capacity for it. These are very nuanced transactions, and it's not in your client's best interest that a judge who doesn't know what variations are, who doesn't know what extension of time claims in construction, who doesn't understand how construction contract is unfair to your clients to take that matter before a construction, before a judge. So usually in some sectors, international arbitration is used as the primary mode of dispute resolution. That creates opportunities for you as a lawyer. You can work from Nigeria, you can advise on disputes in any jurisdiction, obviously by collaborating with other lawyers. There's also opportunities in international commercial and business law advisory. So multinational companies, they want advice on regulatory compliance. So Netflix is coming into Nigeria, TikTok is coming into Nigeria, Microsoft. They want to know, how can I ensure that I am not in breach of Nigerian law? What is Nigerian law on data privacy? We know of mergers and acquisition as well. A company is acquiring another company. Say Stripe is acquiring Paystack, or Oando is acquiring Naok, for example. How do you advise those kind of organizations? So there's a lot of work opportunities that's created in this area. IP protection. Think of the example that I mentioned earlier about a Nigerian who's sampling a South African artist song, and then is now facing a lawsuit where there's an alleged breach of intellectual property rights. Think of international payments. So for example, in the fintech space, that's quite new in Nigeria. We're beginning to see a number of disputes where stakeholders within the fintech space are suing each other, right? You carry out a transaction, and then your money goes missing, or the money is not, the payment is not processed. How do you navigate disputes arising from that? International trade. Some of you have heard of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and the whole idea behind that is that there's going to be free movement of goods, people, and services across Africa. With that creates opportunities, right? If your client in Nigeria is looking to export cocoa or looking to export adire to Ghana or to South Africa, your client needs a lawyer who can advise on work in that area. Of course, energy law, Ms. Duru had spoken about this earlier. we're seeing a lot of movement from fossil fuels to cleaner energy sources, and then this creates opportunities for lawyers to position themselves. How can I be a lawyer who's knowledgeable about energy and natural resources? There's a lot of increase in mining investments in Nigeria. How can what's mining? What's mining law? What's the legal framework? How can I advise an investor who's based in South Africa or who's based in Canada looking to mine resources in Nigeria? That's another opportunity for international work. And then you could also act as in-house counsel for multinationals. You could work in law firms, either in Nigeria. If you work with a top-tier law firm in Nigeria, you definitely have the opportunity to do international work. But if you want to be a lawyer who works in an Ogan Lovels, for example, I was speaking to a friend of mine who went for a secondment in a law firm called White and Case. And just after the secondment, they liked her, and then they said, oh, we're going to keep you. So there are opportunities for you as a Nigerian qualified lawyer to position yourself for work, applying for training contracts in international law firms. And there are quite a number of Nigerians in these international law firms. The question is, what steps do I need to take? Do I need to qualify as a solicitor, for example, in the courts of England, to position myself for this work? Another thing that helps you to position yourself for cross-border work is having some specialized knowledge or skill. So, for example, there are opportunities for immigration lawyers and cross-border asset tracing and recovery, etc. NGO work as well. You could work with non-governmental organizations or international organizations like the UN. For example, there is a vacancy by the Africa Development Bank for lawyers from certain African countries. And you have those vacancies all the time, AFDB, World Bank, etc. So you can actually position yourself, and it's going to be outside Nigeria. You can actually position yourself for those kind of opportunities. You could also take up academic and research roles in universities abroad. And so what skills do you need to be able to get a training contract in London? What skills do you need to be able to be employed by the IFC, for example? Okay, thank you. First is having cross-jurisdictional legal knowledge. No, you're not, sorry. I think it's a slide before that. So the ability to be, that's not it. Yes, to be able to understand multiple legal systems. So the thing with cross-border work is that not everybody uses common law, for example. There are some jurisdictions that are civil law jurisdictions, and then you have to be able to navigate the different legal systems, and a lot of it has to do with your research skills. As lawyers, we're able to do almost everything. Obviously, not everything, but you're able to do like a preliminary part of most tasks. So you should be able to navigate cross-jurisdictional laws and legal systems. Specialized knowledge is very important. So why would a law firm in England or in Canada want to employ you from Nigeria? Do you know how many lawyers there are in these jurisdictions? Both lawyers, indigenous lawyers, and lawyers from across different countries. What will make a White and Case, a Hogan Lovells, a Slaughter and May, or whatever firm it is that you're, what would they see in you to say that we want to employ this person? It's because you have a specialized skill, either tech or construction law or, knowledge of natural resources. So it's important for you to know what is needed in the times that we are in. What kind of needs do my clients have, and how can I meet those needs? So it's important to have specialized knowledge. Another thing that could be of advantage is your language proficiency. Does anybody here speak another international language? International, not Yoruba and Igbo. Yes. Oh, really? What language? French. Portuguese. Oh, that's interesting. You're the only one in the room. Anybody else? Okay, yes. You speak Spanish, not Duolingo Spanish. Oh. Yes, that definitely helps you. And you will see when you're applying for any of these international jobs, you'll see somewhere there where they say knowledge of a foreign language or proficiency in an international language is an added advantage. So if you're a lawyer who's looking to build a practice outside of Nigeria, that's something that you want to pick up. And there are resources to help you. There's Alliance Française. There's a number of, that's if you're interested in French. There's a number of places that you could learn. Of course, this is very important as well. Learning to network, build your personal brand, do an audit of your LinkedIn page. What do people see? Have you heard people share about how somebody reached out to them in their DM to say, we would like you to work with us? And that's the world of work today. Depending on what your profile reads, you might just be able to open yourself to opportunities, international opportunities. So from time to time, ensure that you're building your personal brand, right? And it starts from being a law student. I see a lot of law students on my LinkedIn. I'm like, what do you know about fintech or financial law? They'll say that they are banking law enthusiasts or that they are tech enthusiasts, So from an early stage, and it's okay if you've not figured out what you want, that's fine, right? But just as you build towards becoming a lawyer, be mindful about your personal brand. Come across as serious. Do you understand? At the very least, yes, you're not a lawyer yet and you don't have the portfolio yet, but let us see that you are indeed enthusiastic. You say that you're interested in tech. What conference have you attended? What do you know? What's the legal framework? What cases have you read? Right? So demonstrate interest, in the areas that you say that you're interested in, and build a personal brand. There's LinkedIn. People are looking at you, whether you realize it or not, and then there are many opportunities that you can get from that. Networking is so important. A lot of the greatest opportunities that I've gotten in my life, including the Hogan Lovells opportunity and the London Court of International Arbitration opportunity, were from networks. I attend events all the time. What are the events happening around you? You say you're an ADR enthusiast. I see that a lot. Are you a member of a young arbitrators group? Are you a member of a young lawyers group? Are you a member of any group at all? There are so many opportunities. People want to mentor. People want to help young lawyers, but you need to position yourself for these opportunities. And it is from those networks that you know what's happening. So, for example, you hear about ILFA. ILFA is a secondment for international law firms, where I think about 6 law firms in the UK, they bring in about 6 or 7 lawyers from Africa every year. You can position yourself for those opportunities, but you probably never hear about them if you don't network, or if you don't have a profile on the internet, for example. And then try to be mindful of your global professional presence. Apply for international opportunities. There are internship opportunities with law firms abroad, in case you don't know, and they are fully sponsored opportunities. And then just see how you can leverage a number of those things. Other skills, of course, include your tech savviness, your proficiency in AI-powered legal research tools, your interpersonal skills, and your ability to adapt to diverse legal environments. So discussing pathways, now I've told you the opportunities that exist. How can I get into these cross-border pathways? One is through secondments and international internships. I think I've mentioned that already. You could apply to foreign offices through existing law firm partnerships. So for example, there's 3 Crowns. There are a number of international law firms that have internship opportunities or secondment opportunities for people in Africa or in whatever jurisdiction. So search for them. Just do a Google search. International law firm internship opportunities or international law firm secondment opportunities. Like I said, there's the development banks, there's the UN, etc. Once you get qualified in the call to the Nigerian bar, you may need to obtain an additional license, for example, by being called in the UK or in a bar in the US. etc. Right? Join global law networks, for example, the International Bar Association Network or the Global Law Experts. A lot of these networks have young lawyers forums, so it's important, and even some of them have for students as well. It's important that you try to find some of those. And then, of course, an LLM is a very helpful route to cross over into full-time cross-border legal practice. So what are the challenges that you may experience as a lawyer who's trying to practice beyond Nigeria? One of it is what I had mentioned in the past, the fact that there are different legal systems. In some countries, they use OHADA. In some countries, they use civil law. And you just have to be able to navigate the different legal systems. And then we mentioned licensing and qualification barriers. A problem that a lot of Nigerians who have gone to do their masters in the UK now are having is that they are not qualified, and there's usually a preference for qualified lawyers. And there are even opportunities here. For example, you see on LinkedIn international organizations that are looking to recruit lawyers from Nigeria, and they want lawyers who are qualified in another jurisdiction. So that's something that you may want to be to look out for. You can Google search, how can I get qualified? It's something that you can do even as a Nigerian lawyer. There's also cultural and language barriers. Sometimes you're dealing with a client who's Chinese, and then there's that barrier in language, and you have to get interpreters. You're working across different time zones, and then one way to overcome all of these challenges is by building networks and, in continuing your education, getting specialized certifications. Okay, so now we know some of the options that are available to us. How do you choose? Do I go, what do you do after law school? Do I go private? Do I go into private practice? Do I go and become a senior advocate? Do I go and become a partner in a law firm? Or do I go in-house? Or do I consider public sector work? And I'll just speak briefly about these three options. First, for private practice, the typical roles that you'll find, you start as an associate, a trainee associate actually, or an NYC associate, depending on the firm, and then you progress to become senior advocate, and then you become a partner. And what you typically do, I think we saw Ms. Duru speak to that, you are either going to court all the time, drafting processes, doing litigation and arbitration work, or you are advising clients on how they could be on the right side of the law, or you're negotiating contracts, etc. What are the pros? In some cases, it's high earning, in some cases. And then there's the prestige of working in a good law firm, well, depending on where you find yourself. And then I guess the best advantage I find with working in a law firm is the fact that you get to do diverse cases and industries, right? Despite the fact that I'm a lawyer who, specializes in construction, as a commercial disputes lawyer, I find myself working across different sectors. I'm doing labor today. Doing something that has a fintech element tomorrow, and doing something that has human rights elements tomorrow. So the advantage of working in a law firm is that you get to do different kinds or different sectoral work. In some cases, you even get to rotate across different departments in a law firm. Cons, high stress environment. You don't sleep much, trust me. Long billable hours, competition, you're trying to meet budgets. It's hard, I won't even lie to you, right? But I guess the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. It's good for you if you think that you have strong analytical skills, you're resilient, and you have an ambition for rapid growth. I'm just gonna run through the rest of my slides. For in-house counsel, typical roles, you advise corporations, you help them manage risk and compliances. Your core responsibilities include reviewing contracts, etc. I think, whether it's a myth or a fact, I don't know, but we think that in-house lawyers live a chill life, at least for those of us those of us on the outside, that's what we think. We think that you have a more balanced work life. Yes, and then I think it also helps you specialize in a particular industry. If you work with a tech company, for example, you would know more about tech. If you work in oil and gas, you would have that specialized knowledge. Less variety than private practice. Well, we hear that there's some politics in-house. I don't know how true that is. Yeah, so it's suitable for you if you want stability and you're interested in a specific industry. And then you have a preference for internal advisory over client-facing work or litigation. I have a self-assessment. So, okay, there's public sector, sorry. Okay, if you're interested in working with the government, you want to work with a ministry, you want to work with a parastatal, or you want to do NGO or international organization work, there are opportunities for you here. You're able to impact on society. Someone who said she wanted to, do policy work, this would be a path for you. Well, we hear that the salaries are not as good looking as, other options. I don't know how true that is. We hear that there's a lot of, politics and so are promotions as well. But again, it might be a myth. Yes, so that's that. Let me see. There's an assessment that I have here, but I don't think that we can, just to help you in terms of how to choose what you want to do, identify your strengths. Okay, I've run out of time, so I think I will just close by saying that there are so many opportunities for you as a lawyer who's looking to, you just have to search. Google is your friend, honestly. There are times that if you're just bored, just search, what can I do? What internship opportunities are available? And then, there's this thing, somebody had asked a question about being a high-value lawyer and being a noisemaker. That's how it registered in my mind. There are a lot of noisemakers on LinkedIn. You don't want to be a noisemaker. You want to be somebody who has substance. So spend your time now that you're in school building capacity. Exposure helps you know what to do, right? So for example, I'd asked how many of you want to be senior advocates. It might be that all you know that there is to law is either be a senior advocate or be a judge, right? Find out the other opportunities that exist, Are there opportunities for me in the International Court of Justice, for example? Are there opportunities? Are there areas where they're looking for African qualified lawyers? The thing with diversity has created a lot of opportunities for us as Africans. People are trying to meet their, diversity quota or compliance, right? So that creates opportunities for you, first as a Black person, a Nigerian, and African. And secondly, for the women here, there are so many opportunities that you could explore. Have the competence, be prepared, for those opportunities when they come. And I wish you all the best. Get mentors, that's very helpful. I have a lot of mentors who have helped me, they just tell you when they know stuff. For example, I know that there's an internship. I just remember, there's this serious student from OAU that I know. Let me just send, this opportunity to them. Okay, that will be all from me. Thank you very much for having me.
Another round of applause, please. I am sure you got a lot from that session. I believe so. Even I myself have learned a lot. And trust me, this opportunity, don't joke with it. Because there are some of us that didn't have such an opportunity to learn about these diverse pathways. Personally, for me, I'm not even ashamed to say it. It was like after 5 years in practice that I knew that there were other options, apart from going to court, being a litigator. It was like after 5 years. And I think my journey into this world of joining a top-tier law firm was just like 2-3 years ago. So to have this opportunity while you're still in school, it's a rare privilege. Don't joke with it. Don't joke with this knowledge you have learned today. And the earlier you start, the better. So at this point, I'm going to give room for questions. I'm sure there are questions. If you don't have questions, it means you are not listening. You are reporting yourself. So please, let's have questions. That's good.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to be asking this question based off my personal experience. I got an opportunity to work with a foreign client, and one of the clauses I stated was that any breach of contract will be sanctioned by the law of Venezuela. That was his country. So I'm asking that what are the measures you put in place before you work with a foreign client? And then was it right to sanction under his law, or was it supposed to be my own law, or was I supposed to have sent like a counter something that okay, if you also breach the contract, you'll be liable under Nigerian law? Thank you.
So, my understanding of the question is you want to know what law should be applicable in inter um, jurisdictional agreements. So, first of all, it's a point for negotiation. But typically, it depends on where the service is being carried out or where the contract is being executed. I typically would prefer, so that's one thing. Where is the contract going to be executed? If it's in Nigeria, it makes sense to use Nigerian law, right? But if, for example, the other party is more comfortable with the law, of their country, then that's what would apply. It was online. Yes, so the thing with negotiation is also about who's stronger or who has more to lose, right? People prefer to go to jurisdictions that have stable laws, certain laws, and then stable legal systems, right? Some people, for example, a lot of contracts that we find that people always prefer to go for English law, and parties are at liberty to agree on one law, irrespective of what country they are from. So yes, you can try to negotiate and insist on Nigerian law, but the question is, on what basis would you want to do that, right? Who has more to lose, between you and the other party? But in terms of stability, people always prefer to use laws of other jurisdictions. And yes, okay.
One thing you could actually do is to find a neutral ground. So instead of insisting on your own law as a Nigerian or his own law, because his is a state in the US. I know they are more state, they have their own operations along state lines more than on a federal level. And you will most likely not have any insight as to how that would operate. So in instances like that, it may be best for you to just say, can we agree on a neutral law like the law of England, so that it's not favoring any one party? That way they see you trying to strike a balance as opposed to just being, stubborn and insisting on Nigerian law. A lot of, counterparties of international repute will rather, rely on another law than Nigerian law because of the different issues that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have another question.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So, do all these online job simulations on websites like Forage, can it substitute real, actual internship in all these international law firms?
Well, thank you. It can't substitute, or it can help, right? I guess it's better than nothing. You can't compare a physical internship experience where you're having meetings with team members, where you're going to court and physical meetings with them. It's a different ballgame entirely when you go for a physical internship. But if you have the opportunity for a virtual internship, by all means, take it. There are things that you will learn. There are tasks that they would give you that might expose, that will give you the exposure that you need. I think it's a starting point, but it can't substitute. But obviously, not everybody will get all these opportunities in any event, but just try. Yes.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good
you
afternoon.
talked about the pathway to cross-border practice. And my question in all of this is that does professional bodies like Nigeria Bar Association and others in other jurisdictions, do they have any role in facilitating their members' participation in global or interjurisdictional practice?
Yes, they do have a role, and I think that they do a lot. Well, they do some work in that respect. I know that last year, or this year, the Nigeria Bar Association sponsored somebody to go on an international secondment in London. So yes, they do have a role to promote some of this. and they do a number of things in that regard. They bring people, I know this year they had a conference where they brought people from the Society of Law in England. You know, they do a lot of things in terms of training people and preparing them for. In fact, there was a training yesterday by the International Law Association and the Nigerian Bar Association, you know, on building an international practice and cross-border practice. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My question is, for someone looking to get into international arbitration, what are qualifications or certifications that person is supposed to look out for?
Thank you. It doesn't start with a qualification. It starts right here, right now. Just start reading about it. Start understanding it. When you get qualified and when you become a lawyer, you will then have opportunity. So, for example, the way I got into arbitration was just by working with a law firm that does arbitration. You don't need a certification to start out as an arbitrator. A certification helps you, increases your chances of being appointed as an arbitrator, but you can start with what you have. Start reading about it, read articles, what is international arbitration, and then when the opportunity comes, do internships. Do internship with law firms that do arbitration, whether domestic or international arbitration. There are also arbitration institutions that we have in Nigeria. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration is one of them. They have events all the time where they invite lawyers, including students and young lawyers. There are trainings that happen all the time. Participate in this training so that you know what international arbitration is, and then you then get the opportunity to work, and then you practice, you learn on the job. There are certifications that you could take. There's the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK certification, and there are quite a number of training institutes. There's the Nigerian Institute of Chartered Arbitrators as well. They have training programs, even for students. Yes, but that helps absolutely, but that's not necessarily the starting point. You can start from where you are. Welcome.
All right. Yes, good afternoon. In conversations about mentorships, they tell you that the benefits must be mutual. That is, you're learning and you're also offering value to your mentor. So my question is, what value can a law student offer to a practicing lawyer? Do you ask about their work and try to help conduct researches? Or I honestly do not know what value that you can offer.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that a lot of senior lawyers here would echo what my thoughts are. I think that the greatest value that you can give to a mentor is utilizing the advice that they give you, and making the best use of it. Letting them see that they're not wasting their time. You're having mentorship sessions, they advise you, okay, you should do this. The next time you meet them, you say that, I've written this article, I've applied for this internship opportunity. So that, for me, I find value in seeing growth and improvement in people that I mentor. I was speaking to somebody on Monday who was just, complaining. He's a newly qualified lawyer, and he was just complaining about how hard legal practice is, And I shared a few tips with him. And then when he got home, he then sent me a summary of the things that I sent him, and I thought, this is a serious person. So I think that in terms of value, first of all, just don't waste people's time. Don't do mentorship because you're trying to, tick a box. Thank you very much. Actually apply these things that people spend their, good time, billable hours advising you to do, right? And of course, from time to time, if they have events, for example, attend their events, publicize their events. There are things that you can always do. But in terms of value, I don't think that they necessarily need you, except, they do need it, right? If they have events, you can help them organize, etc. But yeah, that's the biggest value I find in mentorship.
Okay, and our last question.
My question is on arbitration, following what he said. You mentioned going to a law firm that does arbitration, that's how you can start. But what if that law firm doesn't necessarily want to involve you in the arbitration? How can you go about it? Another question is, arbitration is different from litigation. Litigation has its own court rules and court processes. What are the necessary skills that a lawyer should have for arbitration, since it doesn't follow the usual judicial precedent and all that?
Thank you. So your first question, I'm not sure why a law firm that's doing arbitration would... Okay, do you mean as an intern? Okay, well, obviously, because of confidentiality requirements, sometimes there's a limit to how much... Because arbitration is quite confidential, and it's not every time that people can let you in. But there are some arbitrations that you could work on, or there are some things that you could do, whether it's research, maybe somebody wants you to help them conduct a research, right? But there are things that you could do that are not so confidential. And if one firm did not allow you, I'm sure that you could apply to another firm. Law firms are trying to build capacity of young lawyers. So I think that you would find firms that would allow you get exposed to international arbitration. Your second question as to skills for arbitration, as against litigation. I think that arbitration is a chill version of litigation. The skills are quite similar, right? Drafting skills. You're drafting, in court you draft your statement of claim. In arbitration, you still need the same drafting skills. You need your trial advocacy skills, right? It's just that you're not doing objection by law. You're not doing, it's chill. So that's just it. So it's the same skills. You just have to refine it, and a lot of that will come from just even attending sessions. When, for example, you're in a session with an arbitrator from Paris or something, you just see how cool they are. You just know that, no, this one, I don't need to shout, or I don't need to, it's not as adversarial in practice as litigation is, but it's the same set of skills. Understanding of substantive law, understanding of procedure, get familiar with the rules of whatever institution that you're using, know how to draft the different kinds of pleading styles that you have in arbitration, know how to draft your arguments, know how to, your trial and advocacy skills, and it's pretty much the same thing. Then you could also watch on YouTube, there are moots and mock arbitration trials that you could watch as well. You could participate in some of these mock opportunities. It also helps you. There's one I'm currently enrolled in called the Delos Remote Oral Advocacy Program that really just helps you simulate the advocacy in arbitration. Yeah, so that's it. Okay.
Okay, so sorry, one final question from someone online. How can one develop capacity in different areas of law given the current specialist structure in most Nigerian law firms?
So my understanding of that is being a generalist versus being a specialist, right? Or, starting out with a generalist law firm. So I started out in a generalist law firm. Like I said, I started out in Ilorin, some law firm in Ilorin. And then after Ilorin, I came to Lagos. I worked with a senior advocate for 4 years. It was quite generalist, but he had a bias for banking and finance law, right? But I was able to, as a young lawyer, just try to get all the skills. I always tell people that your current job is a platform to prepare you for your next job, right? You want to be an international arbitration lawyer. The law firm that you're working in doesn't currently do international arbitration, right? But are there skills that you can get on this job that can help you get into a top-tier law firm, right? So, for example, we know that it's difficult to, if you don't have your double first classes or, 2-1s in some cases, it might be difficult to get into a top-tier law firm. But the trick is that a few years down the line, it becomes easier. Because at that point, people are looking for who can do the job, not necessarily, who has the grades. So in your early years, try to get the experience, irrespective of where you find yourself. Legal procedure is the same thing in Ilorin as it is in Lagos. Get your substance right so that you can then position yourself and prepare yourself for your dream job. And you can then get into law firms where you can specialize, in our firm and in many other firms, top-tier firms like BNI. You have specialized practices, technology and entertainment, banking and finance, intellectual property, right? So smaller law firms don't have that luxury of specializing. They do any and everything. Get the skills that you need so that you can prepare yourself to get into your dream firm or your dream organization.
Thank you. A round of applause for our speaker.
Thank you very much for having me.